chaos erupting in Spain's northern African territory of Ceuta as thousands of migrants crossed from Morocco. The White House responding to Fox News saying this, quote, President Trump has long warned Europe what would happen if they continued to implement far-left globalist policies, including enabling mass migration. Spain and other countries who have adopted this destructive philosophy should immediately reverse course or risk their own demise.
Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni commenting on X in part, quote, we are prepared to intervene with extraordinary measures to defend the borders and the safety of citizens, including the suspension of the Schengen area with Spain.
Joining us now, former British Parliament candidate with the Brexit Party and Freedom Train International founder, Jim Ferguson. Jim, if we can just look at some of the video of these young military-age men pouring into this tiny area that is part of Spain, if you will, it is unnerving. Finally, Spain calls out the military, but if these individuals are minors, you can't send them back, can you? Just put this in perspective of why this is happening.
Hi, Dagan. Hi, Marcus. Great to be on with you. Yeah, Europe is facing unprecedented challenges with regards to mass illegal immigration. The United Kingdom's the same, Ireland's the same. Pretty much the whole of the Western nations within Europe are facing this unbelievable problem. And you're right to point out, these are not asylum seekers. It's not women and children fleeing war-torn zones. These are young, military-aged men, and they're coming in their thousands. This latest episode in Ceuta in Spain was where they came across from Morocco in their thousands. But the socialist governments in Europe seem to be allowing this to happen. A lot of people are arguing that this is by design. Perhaps it's to get votes. Perhaps it's to get them to remain in power. But it's quite unprecedented. And the European people themselves are seeing their communities overrun. This has been happening for a long time now. This latest episode in Ceuta, Spain, I think has brought it back into the focus again, and it's great that Fox News are focusing in on this as well. Up until quite recently, America had the problem at the southern border. With the US administration under Trump, that has now stopped. So hopefully we can get some changes of governments. But Pedro Sanchez is a far-left socialist in Spain, and he's completely losing control, or it may be worse than that. It might be by design.
Mm-hmm. Jim, when you look at the risk, and we see this on camera, and obviously this is just a microcosm of things that are out there, what other parts of Europe do you think are really vulnerable to this sort of mentality, and how do you stop it? And what does the United States need to do, if anything, to be involved in this process?
Well, first of all, I'll take the second point first. I think what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has done very recently in inviting, I think, up to 60 nations so far have joined this task force to combat serious far-left violence. Groups like Antifa, BLM, the list goes on. But more importantly, what's going on in Europe right now, they have warned. Marco Rubio's warned it, J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and Trump has just recently described it as an invasion. These are powerful words, but I think he's right to say it. What we need to do is put an immediate halt to mass illegal immigration coming across into Europe and, of course, the UK as well. But the governments are not doing enough about it. They could stop it, they could halt it if they really wanted to. But their socialist mentality is they want to invite everybody in. They want to be seen to be kind and fair. But they're ignoring the wishes and the concerns of their own electorate, the people that actually voted them into power, and putting their communities at risk. And of course, we've seen a big rise in violent crime all across the West, not just in the United Kingdom, but in Ireland as well. And the recent attacks in Germany show that there is a big problem because it could also have terrorist links as well. So national security is a huge threat, or a real threat to national security in terms of who's coming in. Are they undocumented? Yes. Do they have their passports? No, they don't. They don't know who they are. And they're being put up into hotels, certainly in the United Kingdom, and just basically just doing whatever they want.
This has happened before, Jim, in Ceuta. That about 5 years ago, Ceuta, only about 85,000 people live there, and some 10,000 people from Morocco and sub-Saharan Africa crossed, again, many of them minors, crossed in. And I just wanted to note, you mentioned Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, a far-left individual politician. He wrote in the New York Times in an op-ed in February, "The West needs people. Currently, few of its countries have a rising population growth. Unless they embrace migration, they will experience a sharp demographic decline that will prevent them from keeping their economies and public services afloat." Is that what he had in mind right there, what we're looking at?
I think this is the mindset of the far left, and it's the same with the Democrats in the United States. I mean, they've gone almost completely communistic in their outlooks, but they're forgetting it with good policies, family-friendly policies, tax breaks for working families, helping to create new business, the mom and pop stores. These are the kind of things that actually help the economy. They don't need to take in thousands of potential terrorists, because that's really what they could be, and certainly those who are breaking the law and creating violent crime.
Stopping the inflow can happen. Our border is closed, but trying to deport people who are already here, that's the tough part. And President Trump has experienced that with the pushback from the left. Jim Ferguson, great to see you.
Thanks, Jim.
Great to be on.